Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Rachel Atcheson. Rachel is doing some amazing work, so I'm excited to have her on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, be sure to check out the Shop tab where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Rachel Atcheson. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Rachel Atcheson, and Rachel is Deputy Strategist for Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, where she works on plant-based nutrition initiatives such as Meatless Mondays for Brooklyn Public Schools. And I'm excited for Rachel to share her story and all of the life-changing work that she's doing. So, Rachel, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Very kind of you to invite me on.
Before we dive into all of the incredible work that you're doing, let's start with your backstory. First off, where you're from, and just kind of walk us through your wellness journey a little bit so we fully understand just how your nutrition and understanding of the importance of a plant-based lifestyle just has evolved over time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question because everyone comes to this from different angles. So I myself got started when I was diagnosed with depression my senior year of high school. I was looking at kind of what was wrong with the world, and I found out that, dang, we do not treat farm animals all that well. And so I started it from a ethical standpoint. I started looking into how we treat farm animals. And then it evolved to, oh, wow, I'm feeling better. I got rid of my eczema when I started eating plant-based. And from there, it evolved to the larger picture of public health, to environmental sustainability internationally. It is really catapulted. So there's a plethora of reasons that one enters this arena. And I think the merging of all of them now is kind of where I'm at, where it is good for animals to eat this way, it's good for human health to eat this way, and it's good for the environment.
Yeah, it really is like a win-win-win. Everybody has their own reason for kind of testing the waters. I mean, yours definitely was animals then, you would say then, right?
At the beginning, it was animals. And then now I work on public health, and I'm just every day learning more and more about the benefits of plant-based nutrition and how much it can revolutionize our healthcare system. And it's motivating me even further. There's just reason upon reason.
That's amazing. And what do you think some of the resources were? Like the very beginning, whenever you were talking about just like you realized that farm animals really weren't being treated humanely at all. Like, was there a resource that you saw or like read, or was there something that really kind of took the blinders off for you at that time?
Yeah, a few different resources come to mind. So one, I was in AP Environmental Science class in my school, and I was learning about the inefficiencies of animal agriculture. So the fact that we have to feed a cow 10 calories in order to get 1 calorie in return just is extremely inefficient. And so when I learned about that, I watched the film Food Inc. And after I learned about just this baseline inefficiency, my head started to think, oh, but also how do they treat the animals in these kind of inefficient systems? And so I read Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, and that was the book that very much tipped me over the edge, I'd say. I was very fortunate because I had vegetarian and vegan friends, so it wasn't this entirely new concept to me. I already knew that, folks survived if they ate vegetables, turns out. As opposed
they weren't dead of protein deficiency.
Exactly.
I mean, that definitely helps having that support system, just to have the friends, because that's a huge part of it. Somebody that might be listening to this who's thinking about making that transition to eat a plant-based lifestyle, it's definitely a lot of pressure on the social side. So the fact that you had that support is so helpful.
100%. I think if you surround yourself with people who are going to influence you in a positive direction, there's the phrase, you are the average of your 5 closest friends. And I think Absolutely. Your eating habits are also the average of your 5 closest friends. So if you are surrounding yourself with people who are open-minded to, hey, we're going to go out to a vegetarian restaurant, or hey, we're going to order this off the menu, I think it's so much easier and you're so much more likely to succeed.
Absolutely. And, let's talk about the amazingness of your career so far. I mean, kind of because the work you're doing is so amazing, Rachel. And to kind of take it back to kid Rachel, do you know what you wanted to do when you were younger? Could you ever picture yourself in an almost political spot like you are now?
Alas, I could never picture myself where I am now. So when I was younger, honestly, my dad was a cop and my mom she was a corporate investigator. She was in the CIA and then lawyer and then corporate. And so I was definitely surrounded by investigators, and I thought potentially I wanted to be a cop. I thought potentially my mom always influenced me to like animals and to respect them. So I thought, maybe I'll be a vet. So I had no idea that I would go into the nonprofit space, honestly. So I started working for the Humane League in 2013, and I was their Boston coordinator. I then became their Philadelphia director, and then I moved to Washington, D.C., back to Washington, D.C., where I grew up, to become the National Campus Outreach Director. And that was a fantastic journey. I loved every second that I was with the Humane League. As I was finishing up the project that I was working on of expanding our campus outreach program from 18 campuses across the U.S. to 55, I just kind of was starting to think, okay, so what is next? And then I very fortuitously got a call from Mayor De Blasio's office in New York City, and they asked me to come up for an interview to be the animal welfare liaison for the city. And
were you freaking out about that call?
It's funny. I live under the largest rock imaginable. It's Mount Hurley. And so I actually didn't know who Mayor De Blasio was before I got that call. I live under a huge rock, and it.
How did they find you?
So I had sent my resume to some of the leaders in the animal protection movement, and I told them that I was looking for another project. And one of them forwarded it on to the mayor's office, and that was the origin. So I worked for Mayor De Blasio for a year and a half. I was working on 2 projects that I'm most proud of, was banning wild animals in the circus. So we see the movement of getting rid of ringling, etc. And New York City was a very good milestone in that movement. And then also piloting Meatless Monday in 15 Brooklyn schools.
It's amazing.
That was my first interaction really with the Brooklyn Borough President. And then he and I got closer, and he asked me to join his team a few months later, and I said yes, and now here I am as Deputy Strategist working on plant-based nutrition initiatives largely. I have recently expanded my portfolio to also work on meditation. It's not completely dissimilar to the positive benefits that you get from plant-based nutrition. There are also a lot of benefits that people get from meditation. So those are my 2 focus areas right now.
That's incredible. I mean, really, when you think about those 2 things combined, I'm thinking about those plant-based nutrition and then a meditation initiative for public school students. I mean, you think about if you implemented that in all schools, all public schools, I mean, any school regardless for kids, what that would look like, like the stress levels that would decrease, or just kids learning how to deal with their stress. They're not having the stress that you get and that we both know that's caused when you eat animal products. It increases the stress levels and just health overall, right? But how impactful that would be for kids all over the world if they would start to implement that. I think that's super powerful.
Absolutely. There's a ton we can do to nourish ourselves with food, and there's a ton we need to do to nourish our mind to kind of move towards a more compassionate society.
How receptive were the schools whenever you guys first started the initiative? Because I could imagine some pushback. I know there's a lot of things you probably have to get through as far as, maybe funding or, just pushback overall. You're making changes that haven't been there before. So obviously when you make changes, people push back a little bit. So how was that initially? How was it taken in?
So it was taken in kind of a couple different ways, because there's a mixture of interest from people who have been searching for these different options. And then there's a mixture of apathy of people who they don't really care what is on the plate. They're not dissecting every bit and piece. So when they see for instance, sadly, we still rely heavily on dairy on Meatless Mondays. So when they see a pizza Monday, it's not as if they're necessarily thinking, oh, where's the meat on that pizza? So right. It kind of depends on what the background is, what the situation is, what the school situation is, to determine how they're going to respond. But we've had a lot of good responses. We've had a lot of people who say, I've never tried chickpeas before, and now I'm eating a chickpea dish. I've never tried tofu before. I'm eating a tofu dish, which is a phenomenal joy to me.
That's amazing. And how long has the school initiative? What's the timeline for that so far?
So we've had a semester of Meatless Mondays where it was just the 15 schools, and then we've had a year of Meatless Mondays as a full year, and then we just started the school year now. So we are still, it's still in the initial phases. This is the first year we're calling it Meatless Mondays. The last full year, we had called it Jumpstart Mondays, as to not kind of ring those sound bells. And then,
right.
And now that we have found it to be successful, now that participation rates are fairly stable, we are embracing full-heartedly the concept of Meatless Monday and calling it as such.
That's amazing. Have you heard, I know you were talking about people trying different foods and being surprised that they like that. Have you heard any other positive feedback, maybe from teachers or from schools, or is it still pretty early on with just kind of getting that feedback back with maybe how it's affected, maybe attention or just overall health of students? Have you guys been able to record any of that as well?
We have not recorded it thus far. Funny you asked that, because I literally have an intern starting next week who is working on a master's project around Meatless Monday in schools. So awesome. If we talk in 6 months, I should have more data.
Well, let's do that.
Exactly. Yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. And what are some of the other initiatives that you're currently working on? Because I know you guys have a lot going on.
Absolutely.
Which is incredible. It makes me jealous that I'm not in Brooklyn.
Oh, I love that. So our crown jewel initiative that we're working on is the Bellevue Plant-Based Lifestyle Medicine Program. So that is a city-funded hospital clinic that is prescribing plant-based nutrition to patients with obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and a few other chronic diseases. So we are actually seeing people reverse their conditions. And we thought that this was going to be a small pilot. We thought it was going to be between 100 and 200 people participating. There are 650 people on the waiting list for this program.
Wow.
It is really blowing itself out of the water in a way that we expected, but we didn't expect it to go this well. And we're just very excited about the interest. And people are really hungry for this information. I think for so long, we think, people don't want to hear it. They want to stick with their meat and potatoes. But, we haven't given people the chance we haven't given people the knowledge that you can reverse your type 2 diabetes. You can reverse your heart disease. That is, for some, revolutionary knowledge that can change their life in extreme ways. And we're seeing that with the clinic. So that is our crown jewel. Meatless Mondays, we have it in schools. We implemented it in all hospitals last year as well. And we are now roll it out in jails, homeless shelters, and daycare centers. So we're still working on logistics of that, and each of those different departments are working out those fine details. But it is moving along, and I'm really excited to see it expand. So
that's amazing.
Those Meatless Monday people know us for. The Bellevue project people know us for. We also are working on the environmental sustainability piece. So we've had 2 pieces come out in the last 8 months on the connection between climate change and animal agriculture. And just to draw attention to the fact that so much of what we are doing to the environment is because of our overconsumption of animal products. And so we had a piece come out in a local publication, City and State, and then we had about a month ago a piece come out in The Hill. And I'm currently working on another piece, and then we're currently working on legislation that once we have it through, I will be delighted to talk about it, but it is still in draft form. So we're figuring out some last details, but it should also be pretty exciting.
I love it. And I love that you are educating as many as possible about what's going on. I mean, I feel like especially this month, people are, I felt a big wave of it this month, especially with, the rainforest is literally burning down. So if you take nothing from this episode, please take what Rachel just said to heart.
So we've got, the Amazon is burning, and sadly, this is not actually new. We burn down the Amazon every year because we need more land, grazing land for cattle, and we need to grow more soy. And soy is fed to chicken, to fish. So we are literally cutting down our forests, burning our forests to feed our drive for meat, our appetite for meat. And so, I want to draw attention, Jonathan Safran Foer, the author of Eating Animals, he actually is coming out with a book called We Are the Weather. And it's coming out, I think, in a week or so. And it focuses on animal agriculture and climate change. And it focuses on the fact that it's really hard for us to do anything about climate change when we don't feel like it affects us. I mean, thankfully, when you start eating a plant-based diet, you typically feel better, and you can feel better very quickly, which is fantastic. So, and I can launch a little bit into the Borough President's story in a bit, but you typically feel better, you feel better quickly. With climate, when you eat differently, you don't feel the effects of, I'm helping the environment. You don't feel that at all, because it's going to take a lot of us in order to reach that tipping point. And so it's harder to connect with the environment, with the environmental angle. So Jonathan Safran Foer's book, I definitely want to plug that, to order it and to kind of listen to what he has to say about what is a realistic way for us to approach this problem.
Absolutely. And I mean, it is something that I love how you worded that, Rachel, because it's the main reason, like you said, people don't do anything is because there's a disconnect. Like you feel like, what can I do to help this? But, we vote at least 3 times a day, right? With what we put on our plates, and we can really make a huge difference. Like one person makes a huge difference. And this is happening at a rapid rate. I think faster than, what did they put? They put was it a 12-year mark on it on that big paper that was everywhere, like CNN, or was it 12 years? I feel like it was something like that.
It's a very short amount of time. It's a little depressing.
It is depressing. We don't want to depress you guys.
Yeah.
But there are things that we can do.
Absolutely.
That one person makes a huge difference. Like Rachel, you were talking about the amount of calories it takes to feed a cow to provide a person with 1 calorie. Like that's ridiculous. Or the amount of water that you have to give livestock to even produce meat to begin with. Do you know the gallon amount right off? I totally blanked on that.
Oh, dear Lord. No, it's in the thousands, though.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So it's like, one person making that change can make a huge difference. And thank you for plugging that book, because I'm definitely going to check that out. That's an awesome title too. If I ever talked to him, that's a great title.
For sure. And we've got a movement full of good resources right now. So Dr. Michael Greger of nutritionfacts.org, he is coming out with his book in December, his newest book called How Not to Diet. So his first book was his book before that was How Not to Die. Right. Now he's coming out with How Not to Diet. So there's a lot of good resources out there, and we're seeing that it's becoming easier and easier to eat this way. I mean, even if you look at some of the less health promoting vegan foods out there, so you look at the Impossible Burger, for instance, not exactly the beacon of good health, but at the same time, definitely a good stepping stone for someone who's trying to change their diet, and also no cholesterol in comparison to the cholesterol that you find in those beef burgers. And we're seeing Impossible Whoppers in Burger King all over the country. That is insane. The movement is just growing exponentially, and the resources are coming along with it, including the Game Changers is a film that's coming out actually in a week now.
And it is. It's like it's Monday, right? It's like a one night. It's a one night showing. One night
thing, and then we'll see how it's distributed after that. I'm so excited about it.
Did you get to see the premiere yet? Did you go to the premiere?
Yes, we went
was it awesome?
It was phenomenal.
I can't wait. Yeah, no, I think it's like, I think the website might be like gamechangersmovie.com, but you can find like this viewings there. It's at most like theaters though. I can't wait. Cause I mean, you've already seen it, right? But I mean, anything James Cameron makes is going to be like awesome. So
for sure,
you can't go wrong. No, that's amazing. It's kind of to go back to some of the work you were doing. We were just talking about like this film. Like, are you guys filming any of the initiatives that you're doing? Are you guys tracking any of this through film to be able to use for later resources for people?
That is a great question. So we take photos at all of our events. We do some filming, but it is not quote unquote filmed all professionally. We do have different press conferences where news channels will come and follow some of the work that we've done. So we definitely do some of that work, but there is always room for improvement, and we'll see it improve over the years for sure.
Awesome. No, I love it. And to kind of go back on what we were talking about too, with just the ability to make a huge change with just by yourself making that change, and then you can, inspire other people to make that change. But I mean, even if you take an initiative like, Rachel has done in all of these schools, like even having a Meatless Monday makes a huge difference. Like that's a lot of animal products not being used. And if that's where you have to start, like that's amazing. I have full respect for people who start with a Meatless Monday and eat animal products the rest of the week, if that's where you have to start. And I'm sure you feel a very similar way.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a city like New York City, we have 1 million kids eating lunch every single day. So when we talk about Meatless Monday, we're not talking about a few hundred meals. We are talking about 1 million meals that were meat last year and now are meatless. So it is a very good first step, and it's a first step that definitely makes some waves.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen this firsthand too, Rachel, through all of the projects that you're working on, just the importance of like coming from a place of love and meeting people where they're at. And that goes for, whether or not you're working on like a large project like Rachel, or if you're just trying to make a positive change for yourself and influence your friends and family, like always coming from a place of love and understanding and just helping however you can, even for those small changes. It's just like the importance of keeping that like positive, outlook on it. It's easier to come from a place of love.
Yes, 100%. And it's more sustainable. So if you're able to make those small waves, for instance, I have people because I used to live in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, I have people from those two states reach out to me about their local school districts and say, hey, how do we get Meatless Mondays? And I walk them through the process. I talk about, the creation of a folder, reaching out to, et cetera. The waves that can come from just those little actions can be terrific. So definitely we need all hands on deck. And if you can make a project that fits your lifestyle and you can continue throughout the ages. The more ideas you get into the space, the better.
Absolutely. So like if somebody's listening and like you were talking about like the Meatless Monday idea and they're like, I would really love this in my kids' school and in my local schools, like whatever the case may be, what would be maybe a few things that they could do, like who they contact, like what would be the best route to make that happen, or resources that they could look into to really help that along?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different routes you can go. So one, first of all, anyone listening to this is more than welcome to get in touch directly. My email is just my name, rachelatcheson@gmail.com. So if you end up really beating yourself against a brick wall, by all means, reach out. The resources that are out there depends on what city you're in, because if you are lucky enough to live in a big city with some of those vegetarian and vegan and plant-based nutrition groups, then they will typically have more of a toolkit and you can easily approach them. So, for instance, the Humane Society has a meat reduction team, and they're doing fantastic things with their Forward Food program, where they actually train people, train cafeteria managers, train chefs to cook plant-based. But you also have groups like PCRM that will talk about these universal meals. So instead of having to think of, what's our soy-free menu going to be? What's our nut-free menu? What's our dairy-free menu? I mean, hey, how about we just create that sort of universal menu that everyone can eat from? And then there are definitely, Google is an amazing asset in the 21st century, and there's a plethora of resources on there as well. So there's a lot out there. In terms of first steps, though, definitely making inroads into the community. So either making inroads into your Office of School Food, be that with a meeting with the Director of Dining Services. That's a great place to start. Or if that is just your local school, having a meeting with the principal, talking about the importance of more plant-forward thinking. Those are all great first steps.
That's amazing. No, I love that. And guys, if you are listening, take advantage of Rachel's information. Like if you guys can just change one school in your area, that can make such a huge impact. So if you're listening, please look into that and try to get involved with that, because it can make such a big difference. And Rachel, what do you think your biggest learning curve has been by taking this career path? I know you said this is pretty opposite of what you probably expect yourself doing from when you were younger. So like by kind of diving into this world, what do you think your biggest learning curve has been just through this whole process?
So I make mistakes constantly. I make mistakes literally every day. And I think one of the biggest learning curves has just been kind of getting over the ego of knowing exactly how to manage the situation. Like I don't know the answer to a lot of the questions that are posed to me, and I have to figure stuff out, and I have to have the humility to ask for help, and the humility to admit mistakes. So I'd say since there's no position like this in the country, I mean, I'm very excited for the next person in government whose sole job is plant-based nutrition to come along. I'm very excited for that wave to make its way across the country. But for the moment, because I'm in uncharted territory, I am learning. I am constantly learning, constantly growing. And I think that humility I'd say Americans have way more ego than they should. So just learning that humility has been a wonderful experience, honestly.
That's amazing. I mean, you really are paving the way, though, for people that want just to help on the political side, just like including these plant-based initiatives. And I think the work that you're doing is incredible, and it's going to help so many people, just future leaders who come up and they want to do what you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing job at that. And I know we talked about a bunch of the projects you're working on, like Bellevue, and you were talking about the meditation project. I mean, is there anything that you are working on in the future that we didn't talk about that you just want to put out there and share so people can be keeping an eye out for?
Sure. Right now, processed meats, while they have been described by the World Health Organization as being carcinogenic, we in the United States have still not taken that to heart. So I'd say we've been, at the Borough President's Office, we've been trying to influence both city contracts. So we have actually influenced the De Blasio administration so much that in their visionary document, One NYC, they have actually included the phase out of all processed meats from any city contract. So we're really excited about that. We're also excited to be kind of paving that way for the other businesses and nonprofits in the food space to also take the stand and say, we're not going to serve carcinogenic food. It is right now, 50 years ago, doctors were still smoking cigarettes and it was
right.
seen as normal. And so we're seeing that now with processed meat, where we're starting to get the data, like the WHO report, the processed meats are carcinogenic, but we as a society have not caught up to that. So I'm really excited to see more of a phase out and more of a public eye on processed meat. And that is just one, the plethora of projects that we're working on. So to give you a little bit of backstory on the borough president, so he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2016. And when he was diagnosed, he was he had a case of diabetes so severe that he was blind in his left eye and had tingling in his fingers and toes. The doctor said they'd probably have to amputate a few fingers and toes. They said to turn in his driver's license because he wasn't fit to drive. And he, instead of kind of going with the status quo of just taking insulin and being content with the rest of his life living as a type 2 diabetic, he did some research and found out about whole food plant-based nutrition, visited the Cleveland Clinic and saw Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, read Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, and really took his health into his own hands and reversed the diabetes, got his sight back, lost 35 pounds, and is a new person. And so one of the projects that he's working on is his book. So he is an African-American male, and his book is centering on his journey as well as his mom's journey, but then also the larger conversation of the connection between slave food and soul food. The fact that foods of the Southern diet are killing the African-American community and disproportionately is truly upsetting, to say the very, very least. And so he's shedding some light on that in his book, which I'm very, very excited for him to be doing.
That's exciting. Do you know when his book's coming out?
Roughly October 2020.
Got it. No, that's amazing. And that's going to make such a huge impact. I can't wait for that to come out. That's going to be amazing. I haven't met him yet. He seems like an amazing guy.
He's a fantastic guy. I'm very, very fortunate. I try and collect as many mentors as possible throughout my life, and he is definitely a phenomenal mentor, right?
No, Rachel, your work is incredible. I'm excited to follow along just the more and more you change Brooklyn and how that just leaks into other states as well. I know you're going to make a huge impact, and I want other people to follow along too. So what is the best way for people to follow you on social media? That way they can keep up with everything that you're doing and just be able to find you if they have questions along the way.
Sure. By all means, if you look me up, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's XVX Rachel, XVX standing for Vegan Straight Edge, the no drinking, no drugs aspect of my life. So for Instagram, at XVX Rachel, for Twitter, R_Atcheson, my last name, and for Facebook, just Rachel Atcheson.
Perfect. I'll put all of those in the show notes. That way people can just go click and give you an ad. And Rachel, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's something that's been your biggest takeaway on your wellness journey so far. If you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
Ooh, that is a great, great question. And I love ending the show on that positivity. And so my piece of advice today is a piece of gratitude. At the end of the night, I will typically say 5 things that I'm grateful for throughout the day to really keep me centered and keep me remembering how good I have it, and keep me centered on doing good for the world. So I recommend trying to take as good care of your mental health as you can. And one part of that is these gratitude journals that I've kept. So that's the small tidbit for today.
I love it, Rachel. That's perfect. And just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you, and I can't wait to keep up with all of your projects. The work you're doing is super inspiring. So Rachel, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. Have a nice night.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Rachel. She's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give her a follow on social media to keep up with everything that she's been working on. You can find her social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Rachel's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Rachel, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.